bored and want to make some cool things, then here are a bunch of creative crafty hobbies presented by someone with so many hobbies they could only hope to be bored again someday. It's been months. I'll be giving a brief overview of everything, what materials you'll need, what you need to learn, and then going through a project with you from start to finish. Punch needling, ooh, is probably the most satisfying of the hobbies because it's the fastest and you're basically just stabbing something over and over again, which is nice. You'll need some yarn, punch needle, a punch needle threader. Oh, why is this stuck? Oh, it's not. And some canvas. Or you could use an embroidery hoop, but I hate using embroidery hoops for punch needle because you have to use quite a bit of force to push the needle through, and that just makes the fabric come loose over and over again. I even ruined one of my embroidery hoops because all the metal got bent from me trying to tighten it so much, and like, don't recommend it. And lastly, you'll also need some monk's cloth, which is the cloth specifically for this. It has holes in it. It's a woven cloth. Don't know why it's called that. For the canvas, I just bought a cheap one at Michael's. Used a coupon, even cheaper. And this you can reuse over and over again. Or you can make your own frame, I don't know. Because all we're using is the wooden frame. We're gonna take off all the staples, take off the canvas, and then replace the canvas with some monk's cloth. You'll also either need some drawing talent, a projector, a printer, or a tablet / light screen to transfer your images onto the monk's cloth. But if that's really hard, you can just try to rip the canvas. The staples are in there pretty good for this one. Ta-da! Now I'm just laying this out so I can cut a piece of it big enough to go around here. I'm doing this not on my bed because this stuff gets everywhere. Like, my place is gonna be a mess for the next week because of this, I think. If you own a serger, I highly recommend serging the ends like this once you cut it. Those things are expensive. I do not have one, nor will I be owning one anytime in the future. If you're gonna be using a projector to transfer your image on here, then I would put this on now. I made this too big. Or if you're drawing it yourself, also a good idea to pin this all now. But I'm going to just be tracing this heart onto there with my iPad. You can stick it on like that. Oh, turning up the brightness is a good idea. If you want to use this method but you don't have a tablet, you can print out whatever your design is and then tape it to the window and then tape the cloth to the window and then trace it that way. But I am reach, so I'm doing it this way. You can use any marker you want to draw on your cloth because you're not gonna see anything once it's done. I have a like a washable tracing marker. Absolutely not necessary. Look, I'm covered in stuff. It's everywhere already. Said I wasn't gonna do anything on my bed and here I am. So I'm just gonna go ahead and trace this now. You know what? Does my iPad fit in this thing? No, it's so close. My cloth isn't gonna be pulled tight enough to do this. Troubleshooting? It's whatever. I'm going for it. It'll look better than if I draw it myself anyway. Now I'm gonna stick it on here. I'm going to try to draw the rest myself because otherwise, like, how am I gonna find that? I don't know. I use these little tacks to put them on. You can also use staples, but these are kind of reusable, so I use this. And my method is doing like a few on one side, then stretching the opposite side over, doing a few on there, and then doing the same with the other sides, one side first. And you want this to be super tight. And once I finish that, I go back in and fill in all of these just to keep all areas tight. Again, this is a lot of extra fabric. I usually just do it maybe a bit more than this. And now I have a slight problem with my heart because I put it on wrong and this is wood here, so I won't be able to punch through here. I think I'm just gonna redraw the heart. Trust myself. I may as well fill up this whole thing. I'm gonna do it in a different color so I don't get confused. Trust myself. Just one fell swoop. Nope. That's too close too. Duh. Third time's the charm, question mark? I don't know. It's a mess, but it's my mess. Now we're doing this in the same pattern that HOSHI's little jumpsuit is in the Fighting music video. So I'm gonna do checks first. I'm very scared about all this. I'm not going to use a ruler like I had planned because I'm too lazy to find one. I don't even know if I own one, to be honest. Beautiful. Oh, why am I scared? So nervous. I don't even know what my real heart is. There's so many lines. Oh, those are rectangles. Ugh. I'm gonna shade in, not too much because I have to draw the cherries over this as well. But just so it's not confusing and I don't mess up the colors, it's nice to color in all your thingamajiggers. All right, I'm dying. Now I need green too. The cherries are basically just little hearts, and you've seen how well I did the heart, so I didn't even look at the pattern. I haven't seen his jumpsuit in months. I am too lazy to look it up. Why? I'm gonna ruin my thing. Little stems. I don't know if they have leaves on them. I don't remember. Should I just do 2 cherries? Sure, less work. Now for a brief tutorial on how to thread the needle. I bought one of the like proper needles and I cannot find it. I don't know where I put it. I am very disappointed in myself. So now I'm using the one that I originally bought from Amazon, and it's fine. It just springs up sometimes, which is a bit annoying. The other one is nicer to use, but I don't have it. I'll have everything linked below, by the way. I'm gonna start with the cherries, so I'm using red. And so you get this little threader that comes with your needle. You stick your yarn through the top of it like that. No, you don't. It's been a while. It's been a while. You first stick this through your needle. Oh, through your needle. This is a mess. And another reason why I don't like this one is because it gets stuck in one of the parts of this and it takes forever to get this through sometimes. Okay, so you stick it through here. It comes out through the top, and then you stick your yarn through it. Hello. Struggling. Then you pull it through, like so. And then you also need it to go through this hole. So you can stick your threader, so difficult, through here. Stick your yarn in there again and pull through. Your needle is now threaded. From here, it is very simple. Yes, setting this up was a bit much, but you're only gonna have to take apart the canvas once for this frame, and now you can use it over and over again. Now, what you do is basically stab this over and over again. We have options for different lengths here if you have an adjustable one. It's hard to use the shorter ones because they sometimes will pull through. I don't want mine super long. I'm going with like this length, which is C on my thing. Or should I do the cherries bigger? I don't know. It's fun to work with lengths. Yeah, I'll do the cherries at B and then I'll do the rest at C. We just stab into our cloth wherever we want to start, and then we'll see at the back here our little thread. We just pull that through and leave it hanging. And then we're just gonna keep pulling out, move like just a few, depending on how many little loopy loops you want or how bunched together. I can't speak, it is morning time. And then you're just stabbing, follow through, stabbing. The only thing you have to worry about is this yarn has to be super loose. Like you can't have any tension on it whatsoever or it'll start pulling the loops out. So definitely be conscious of that. This is what the little loopy loops look like on this side of our protege, and that's literally all there is to it. So as you can see, the back is the side that's gonna be all pretty. I mean, this is gonna be pretty too. It's gonna look more like embroidered stitches, but this is gonna be the fuzzy side. If you make a mistake, it's super easy to just pull all this out, and when you're done using the color, you just cut it off and then switch to a new color. Super easy. What I like to do is follow around the lines here and then just keep going around and around till it's all full. Also, while keeping this yarn, just like keep pulling out yarn and leaving it sit there nicely, just so that you're not putting any tension on this whatsoever. And when you're done, I'm not done here obviously, but I found my other punch needle, so I'm gonna switch to that one. So all you have to do is pull this away, and literally I just cut it pretty close because you're gonna have to cut it anyway. That's not gonna come out, don't worry.
Don't worry.
But for lines, it's kind of hard because if you do it the same as the rest, it's kind of very sparse. Is it sparse or sparse? There's not very many. So what I like to do is just either go over this twice or just do them very close together. Like this time I punched as often as I could and it looks a lot better. And will hopefully still show up when I put the rest in. Are we ready for the final reveal? Yes, this side looks beautiful. If I had made it more neat, I could have the option of using this side too. Well, bam! JK, this isn't the final reveal because we need to do some trimmings. Any of these little tails that we made in the beginning can just be snipped off as close to the project as possible. Also, if you have any of these messy little loopy loops, you can also just trim those down as well. It won't make much of a difference to the overall look. The last thing I like to do is, if you can see any of the colors where they're not supposed to be, you can just kind of like nudge them all into place fairly easily. It just makes it look cleaner. Then I will go ahead and remove these little tacks again, placing them safely in this box, hopefully, so I don't end up sitting or laying on them later. Be some fun times. I'll now cut around this about 1.5 to 2 inches around my art. And how you finish this now depends a lot on what you're doing with it. If you're gonna use it as a coaster, you might want to back it with some felt. If you're making a rug, you might want to stitch around it like I did with this one here. Not very neatly, because this is a very funky shape and it was difficult. If you want to see how I did that, you can watch the video I did for this. I also linked in that video the video that I followed to be able to do that. It was very helpful. Some people will Mod Podge or just use like liquid glue, Elmer's glue, paint over the back of it just to hold everything in place, but honestly, you don't need it. You would have to physically try to pull these out for them to actually come out. Like, they're secure in there. You don't need to worry about that. I've never put glue on the back of any of my projects so far. The only time I would recommend it is if you make like super long loops that could catch on something and then pull it out, then you should maybe glue the back of it. For me, I am going to be putting this on my wall. So what I'm going to do is put cardboard back on it. So I'm gonna use a glue gun to stick all of these down. I got this glue gun that comes with all different colored glue, like, oh, because I thought that would be fun, but for the most part they look pretty ugly. Actually, that looks nice, but when they run out of colors you have to change it, and if you want to change it to a different color then they mix together and form a non-pretty color, but it's fine. When you do this, you want to be careful. Obviously, always be careful with a glue gun, but it can very much and does seep through this fabric because the fabric's pretty thin and holy. Also, the more curves and funky shapes you have, the more, ow, be careful, the more difficult this will be. So just keep that in mind when choosing a shape, especially as your first project. A square is very nice. Beautiful. Well, messy, but beautiful. For my cardboard, I have a bunch of cardboard boxes here because I'm very lazy when it comes to throwing out cardboard boxes for some reason. But it worked out this time. Beautiful. I put away my freaking glue gun because I thought I didn't need it anymore. Smart. Got to turn it on. Oh my goodness, look how beautiful. I just realized though that I don't have anything to put it up with. No sticky things. Sadness. Cross stitch is next. You'll need an embroidery hoop, embroidery floss or thread, whatever you want to call it, and Aida. I don't know. Cloth. I don't know how you pronounce that. Oh, and of course, a needle. And of course you can buy the kits that have the photos, the everything included, but those are huge, take forever, and unless you like landscapes, what I like to do is go on my best bud Pinterest. Then you just type in whatever you want and grid pattern. So I am going to be making this One Punch Man cross stitch because I made this for my brother for Christmas. Hello? And I wanted to keep it. So I'm finally going to make it again for myself. And plus it's super simple. I like making things super simple because then it's super fast. And it's also super cute. It's a win-win, win-win-win. First step is to stick your cloth in this thing. So you just twist this to loosen this one and that'll come out. Then you use this little one, you stick it behind your fabric, your Aida cloth. And then you stick this over top of, you may need to loosen it more. I need to loosen it more. Over the top. You don't necessarily have to use an embroidery hoop for a cross stitch since this fabric is pretty stiff. Actually, come to think of it, I prefer doing it without the embroidery hoop, but we've already done this, so why not? So we'll put it on like this, and then we'll tighten it again. And it doesn't really matter if it's centered or not, you can always move this around. For your thread, this comes in pieces, I think it's 6 together. Oh no, it's in a knot. The freak. So usually just cut a workable piece. Don't cut it too long. It will get tangled, and even if it doesn't, having to pull out a lot actually ends up taking more time. So I'll cut a piece about this long. Ew, what is on my scissors? Anyway, as you can see, maybe not, there's a bunch of strands in here. Usually you would just use 2 at a time. 2, and then you just separate it all. Hopefully it doesn't get knotted on the way. And then you can keep these for later, and then use this, thread the needle like a champ. There we go. And now we just follow our pattern. Or actually, no. I'm actually gonna cut around this piece just so this all isn't in the way. And you wanna make sure that you leave enough room, because if you're gonna keep it in the embroidery hoop to like use as like a frame, which I usually do, you're gonna want to be able to, you know, have space. You know, oh my goodness. Much more manageable. Basically what we're doing is we're just making a bunch of X's. That's why it's called cross stitch. Marvelous, isn't it? I'm just gonna start with the bottom of his chin here. And so I'm gonna make my first, what, square, what? Cross. We pull this through, hold on to this in the back so that it doesn't come all the way through, obviously. We're working in these squares here. So while holding this in the back, just so it doesn't come out, you're gonna go across from here. So we're in this corner now, we're going into this corner and pull that to der. And then we're gonna come to finish the X. We're gonna find the hull, which you get used to after a while, it gets easier, but it's literally been like a year since I've done this. Since that's pulling a loop in the back, we can make sure that this yarn gets caught in that loop so we don't have to hold it anymore. And you don't have to tie it in or anything, that's pretty stuck in there. To finish your X, you just go like this. Ta-da! Our first X. Beautiful. To be faster though, we don't have to cross our X's right away. I would do a full row. So like I have 7 more X's to do here. So I'll just go quickly, or not quickly because I'm out of practice and I never really was good at this to begin with. Seen someone on TikTok do 2 holes at once. I don't think you can do that with an embroidery hoop, but if the embroidery hoop makes you feel cooler, then why not? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a lot of counting, basically, is what you're doing. I just love that there's so many things you can do with grid patterns. So you do your full row of crosses one way, and then you can come back and cross the other way. And I'm not particularly particular about it, but some people want to make sure that you're crossing over the same way every time. So like the stitches facing this way are on top and not like sometimes on the top and sometimes on the bottom. I don't know if I would even notice if that happened. So I finished this first row. I just did this one. Now I'm going to move up and 1 over to do the next row. So I'm coming up from here now and doing my row across here. Ta-da! And so on and so forth. When you get to the end of your yarn, you still do not need to tie it in. You just need to stick it under a couple of stitches here and you're good to go. On to the next. Nice. Progress. Ta-da! I finished this last night. This is super simple, so it took like no time at all. Usually how I finish it is I make sure it's centered in the place that I want it to be, which the embroidery hoop reminded me to do. Thank you so much. What I've done before is I've cut out a circle, tracing it using this, and then just like folded all this in and stuffed it in the center there. But since I'm just going to probably just add this to my shrine or something, I'm just going to stitch loosely around the edge of all this and then pull it tight and then tie it in a knot. It's a little messy, but no one will know. How would they know? So cute. And of course, I'm gonna be talking about crochet because I am the crochet master, or you know, like I'm intermediate. Soon. All you need for crochet is some yarn and a hook. Crochet has a lot more basic stitches than knitting does because knitting just has like 2 and they're basically the same thing but backwards. But they are all very simple, so I'll go over a brief description of all of these. You basically just add an extra step to each thing, and each step makes the stitches taller. So first one is you insert your hook, pull up a loop, pull that loop through the first loop. That is a slip stitch. You don't typically crochet with this. That would be like just for an ending of a row. Like say you're ending this project, but you don't want obviously this like big corner thing. So you just slip stitch into here to kind of work it in there. Second stitch is the single crochet. We insert, pull up a loop. Instead of pulling this loop through here this time though, we yarn over and pull this through. Single crochet. Next one is half double crochet. Before we insert, we wrap around, insert, pull up, yarn over, pull through all. Next is double crochet. We wrap around again, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first two only, yarn over again, pull through the second two. Next is triple crochet. We wrap around twice, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first two only, yarn over, pull through the second two only, yarn over, pull through the last two. And as you can see, the stitches are getting taller. You do not have to memorize all those now. Most projects only use one stitch, so you can learn each stitch with a new project and you're good. Secondly, there's two ways to start your crochet. If you're crocheting in the flat like this, you would do a chain. You do a slip knot, just like one of these little knots here. Put your hook in there, and then you just yarn over and pull through as many times as you need stitches, because then you just go in and stitch in these here. There's also many ways to stitch into this. You can stitch into just the top loop there. You can stitch under both of these. You can stitch into the back ribs, just kind of whatever you feel like. The second way to start a project is if you're crocheting in the round. If you're making circles, you make this fancy thing called a magic circle, which is kind of complicated at first, but you just do all your stitches into this. Then you pull it closed like this, and you have a little circle to work in around. Those are mostly for like plushies or if you're making a hat. Today I'm making Felix's cat hat, and the cat hats start with a chain. I think cat hats are great for your first project because they are super simple. We're literally just crocheting a big like rectangle and then stitching it together at the sides. For hats, I'm gonna measure my head. Though I already know, I've measured my head like a bajillion times since I started crochet. It's 22, but since you want the hat to fit a little snug and yarn is pretty stretchy, especially if you're doing rib stitch. We're not doing rib stitch, don't worry about that. Then you wanna go down a little bit. So I'm gonna take off an inch, so I'm gonna say 21 inches. We just need half of our head circumference, because this is gonna stitch up to be that, and then we're gonna fold that in half, stick it over our head kind of thing. You'll see. Your chain might be a little tighter or looser from your stitches for a little bit until you get your tension right. I'm not even like, I just figured out how to do this properly. So your measurement of your chain's not necessarily going to be right. By the time you do a few rows of stitches, it might be a little shorter, it might be a little longer. So a good thing to do before you start a project, especially big projects, I don't do it for things like this because it's so easy to go back and redo things. But for bigger projects, definitely do a little square, count your stitches, measure that, and make sure that the amount of stitches is gonna give you the right amount of inches. My chain right now is 11 inches, so I'm just going to start with this. His is also pretty loose fit, so it's not a big deal if it's a bit loose. This hat is double crochet, which is awesome because then it goes faster. When you're doing double crochet, you want to do an extra 2 chain on the end of your starting chain, just so that we can build to the height. Otherwise, it's gonna like kind of slant your first stitch. So you'll do 2 extra chain, and then you'll double crochet in the 3rd chain from the hook, and then work your way along to the end. Color changing for crochet is also very easy. You just don't finish off your last stitch. You leave the 2 on before pulling through the last, and instead of pulling through your current working yarn, you grab your new color like this and pull that through. Ta-da! And usually you chain a couple again just to reach the height before you flip over your work and start working your way back across. So we're just doing 1 row in each color, and I'm using a 5mm hook. Your hook will affect how tightly woven your stuff is. So if I use a smaller one, it would be less holey, and a bigger one would be more holey. Same with if I use a bigger one, the project will end up bigger, which means I need a less amount of stitches per the same size, and vice versa. Another reason I love crochet is that you can work over your strands as you go, and then you don't have to weave them in at the end. Amazing. I finished my rectangle. It is 17.5 inches, because basically this is going to be like so. So now all I have to do is fold this over, crochet up this side. I'm just gonna do single crochets, probably 2 single crochets in each little double crochet here. This side and then up this side as well. I also forgot to talk about finishing. I usually do a slip stitch, which I showed in the beginning. You just pull that there. And then to fasten off, you literally just yarn over, pull this through, then you can cut it, and that makes a knot. Ta-da! And then you can just weave in this end. Turn it right side out. Fold over our little ends here. It is pretty oversized, but that's the way it's supposed to be. So why do my ears look sad? Whatever. Everything I make turns out oversized. It's annoying. I don't know how idols deal with stuff in their eyes. Another one for the pile. Knitting time. We are going to be knitting Mashiro's little top here from Kepler's Up Performance. All you need for knitting is some needles. There's like 3 different kinds of needles that I know of, and some yarn and a darning needle if you need to sew things together. My favorite things about knitting is that it is less chunky than crochet, so it's more comfortable to wear. Also, I can knit while not looking at what I'm doing at all, whereas for crochet I have to look every so often. I use circular like corded needles just because then you can use this to work flat pieces or in the round. Today I'm gonna do 2 flat pieces, though I could just cast on all my stitches and then do the whole shirt like in the round, but I feel like it'll be less confusing if I do 2, the front and the back separate. When I knit, I usually make like a little square or rectangle, because I'm too lazy to like complete the square to see how many stitches I need to cast on, because I can't really tell from casting on how big it's gonna be, whereas like for chain you kind of can tell for crochet. So I don't have a measuring tape with me at the moment, so this is not technical. 1, 2, 3. We'll go 3 of these, and this is 20 stitches, so 3 times 2 is 6, so 60 stitches. Usually I would measure this and then divide that number by how many stitches is here. So I have a sample of 20 stitches. So say if this was 10 inches long, then I would divide 10 by 20, which is a half, so each of my stitches would be a ½ inch. And then I would measure like however big I want it to be, and say I wanted it to be 20 inches. I have no idea. I'm making up numbers. I don't know how big that is. I don't use inches. I do use inches. What am I talking about? I'm literally using inches right now. So say this is 20, I want it to be 20, and each stitch is half, which means I would need 40 stitches, and I hope that math is right because I really suck at math. Didn't use a calculator there. Or from my noggin. The needle size just depends on how wholly or tightly woven your fabric will be. Really, I should be using a lot smaller of a needle, but I don't want it to take forever. It takes way longer, and it hurts my hands holding the little teeny tiny needles. So I'm using a size 8mm for this. So as you can see, it is pretty holy. That's okay. So now that I'm done my sample and I know how many stitches I need, 60, then I can just destroy this because there's no point keeping it. I'm probably gonna forget. I should have recorded that down. 60, 60, 60. Do the same for the back. And now I'll go briefly over the things you need to know. So how you get all your little loop-de-loops on your needles, that is called casting on. And how you cast on are the only way I know how to cast on. It's called long tail cast on. So you have to make sure you leave a tail long enough to do the cast on, and I've only made a few projects, so I'm not really sure. Did I tell you I'm not good at knitting? I'm not good at knitting. This tutorial is basically so you know what you can look up after to actually learn it. I'm gonna leave a tail about this long because I have no idea. And then you're gonna make a slip knot, just this fancy little knot here, and you're gonna stick that on your needle. That'll be your first loop. You take this tail, you wrap that around your thumb like this, and then this is called your working yarn because it's the yarn that is attached to the ball that you will be working with. So you have this wrapped around your thumb, you put this around over. That's not how you do it. Why is that not working? Hello? So you wrap this around your thumb, and then you insert the needle, you wrap this around, and then you go like this, and none of that made sense from that angle. I'm going to turn you around. What a beautiful background. This is our tail, the one that's not attached to the ball. So we wrap this around our thumb like this. We stick the needle in the little loop we made. Then we wrap this around like so, and then we pull this over, and then we kind of just like tug everything a little bit tight, not overly tight, and then you do that forever until you get all your loop-de-loops on there. This takes me forever, but there are people out there who are like, that'll be me someday. Maybe. I don't know if I'm gonna stick with this. Probably not. So I got all my loop-de-loops on now. This is a 60. There's only 2 basic stitches for knitting, which is also nice. There is the knit and the purl, and we're gonna be using both for this project. So the knit stitch is sticking the needle in like this and wrapping this around and pulling it through like this and off the needle. That's a knit. For purl, you start with the yarn in front, then you stick your needle in from top down, wrap it around, then pull off this way. I'm not good at knitting, like so. And if you keep going back and forth like that, that's called a rib stitch, which I will show you what that looks like in a second. So this is what the rib stitch looks like. It has these little ribs here. It's very stretchy. You'd probably see it better if I was using smaller needles, and typically people do use smaller needles while they do the ribbing. This is for like your cuffs, your neck holes, collar, the like bottoms of shirts. And as you can see, Mashiro has it on the bottom of her shirt. And you can also see that it is with a smaller needle. I didn't bring smaller needles, so I am currently at the Fam Jam's house. And as much as I would love to go up a size in needles for this next part, I don't think I will. We're going on to the next stitch, which is called the stockinette stitch. Stockinette stitch. I don't know what people were saying. And that is using the exact same stitches we just learned, and it's still alternating, only instead of alternating every stitch, you alternate every row. So you're gonna do an entire row of the knit stitch and then an entire row of the purl stitch, which looks like this. The V's on the front and the back looks all bumpity bumpity. This is going to be the back panel because I like to do the easiest parts first so as not to get discouraged from finishing the project. So basically I'm done because the back is straight across. I couldn't get a better picture than this, I'm sorry. It goes from like here to like just above the belly button is what I can tell. I'm gonna show you how to finish off now. It's called casting off, and you can just do it while you do your last row. So you'll knit or purl this like normal, just whatever row you're on. Perfect. Next one. And every time you have 2 on here, you just pick this one up and pull it over that one. So you're just lifting this one and putting it over the top of this one. And that finishes off the work like this. This is all finished off. Which will look like this. It's quite curly, which knitting does. Fun times. But there is such a thing called blocking, which I think would fix this, but I'm not gonna get into that. I've never tried it before, and I'm not doing it today. I'm sure the straps will probably most likely keep this relatively uncurled. Back is done. For the front, we're gonna do the exact same thing up until here, only instead of casting off, we're gonna start shaping for this part, only I don't really know how to do that. I.e., this is where it gets difficult. I think I will cast off 2 stitches on either side to get the armholes going, and then I'll start decreasing on either side to continue. I don't know, we'll see what works. But I did mention earlier, but something that I really hate about knitting is that undoing your work is way harder. In crochet, you just freaking pull it. It all comes out to wherever you want it to go. For this, I guess technically you could take it off of your needles and then pull it out, but then you have to be super careful about getting every stitch back onto your needles, or you're going back stitch by stitch, one at a time, which takes forever. So I am hoping this works. Though I also seen someone do a trick where you just get a needle and a different colored piece of string, put it all through your loops here, and that's like your safety net. So if you wreck everything from then on, you can pull all the way back to that thing. And maybe I should do that now. I've never tried to do that before. I'm gonna try to do it today. I'm not sure if this is how you do it because it's been a while since I've seen that person do it, but I assume I'm just sticking the yarn through all of these loops here, and hopefully that works if I have to go back. Though hopefully I don't have to go back actually. I'm just using a darning needle, which is just a thicker needle with a bigger hole used for yarn. It's gonna take forever. I definitely started regretting this halfway through, but it feels like a waste of effort to stop now. I don't even know if this is gonna help. There we go. Watch me get this right for once and render this completely useless. So yes, I shall cast off my 2 first stitches. It's 1 and that's 2. Is that enough? Sure. And then we will decrease, which is super easy for knitting. It's just knitting 2 together and then continue the rest like normal. Increasing is more difficult and I'm not even sure if I'm doing it right. If you need to increase, which we don't need to do for this project, look it up. Actually look up all these things because I am not good. I don't know what I'm doing. I couldn't figure out how to cast off at the end of the row because there's always a loop left at the end, so then it'd be cast off in between and then have one loop at the very end. So I just didn't cast off that row for that end and then did it at the beginning of this next row. I cast it off for this round. Will it be noticeable? Maybe, probably, I don't know. This is all an experiment. For this next row, I'm going to start the neckline because it is pretty much as low as the armpit area. I'm going to cast off 3 in the middle because it is a little bit wide and I don't know how the decreasing is in that shape either. Ha 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 ha. I don't know what I'm doing. What am I doing? So I marked off my 4 middle stitches that I'm going to cast off, so I'm just going to continue this row like normal till I get there and not freaking lose all my stitches here. The freak. I have now reached my 4 stitches. I am confused though because this looks like it's kind of together, like pinched in together, so I'm wondering if some of the stitches were cast off together. Can you even do that? I'm gonna put all 4 together and see what that looks like, which means I'm going to do these stitches like normal, then my stitch is gonna go over all 4 of them. And this is experimental, but these are the 4 that I just did. And so I'm going to get this last stitch. No, that doesn't make sense. You can't go over all of them. What do I do? What if I go like this, then go like this? But they're not all together, are they? If I do it like that? Yeah, they are all together. Okay, well, I don't know. I have no idea, actually. All right. Now it's time to start working each side individually to make the triangles. And I usually just put all the other side onto a different set of needles, but I completely forgot about this and I just brought one of my cords. I have other needles, but they don't have the cords with them. So I think I'll just have to put them all on a string or something. I ended up just sticking it on one of my other needles. So I'm gonna have to be careful these don't fall off while I work on the other side, but I don't know, it'll be fine. Now what I believe we shall do is we'll decrease on this side here, and in the middle it looks like it's just working some rows and then doing the weird casting off thing here, but I don't know, we'll see what that looks like. So I will be decreasing on this side every time and then just working the middle like normal. It's falling off already. And then just working the middle like normal for a few rows and then doing the casting off, whatever the heck's going on there. So I tried out a bunch of different things, which I think would look fine if I was a more seasoned knitter and it looked neater, but I'm not, so it's kind of messy. So the first one I tried just decreasing, but with 3 together, so knitting 3 together. The second one I knit 1 like normal, then I knit 3 together, then I used the one that I first knit to cast off the 3 together stitch that I don't know. And then I did basically the same for this one, but I knit 2 to begin with, cast off the 1 and the 2, and then I knit 3 together, and then I casted that off as well. But that's a bit complicated. And it went out a little bit too far. So I think I'm gonna stick with what I did here, so I will show you that. So I knit 1 like normal. Then I knit 3 together, which is very difficult. 3 together, and then I use this one to cast off this one. I'm not really sure what that does. I don't really know what I'm doing. And then I just knit these ones like normal. I'm just doing like 3 or 4 rounds in between each of these fancy decrease things. And then for this side, for the armhole, I was decreasing every round until my last 2 fancy decreases. I just started decreasing every other row for this side, just so that it's not as far in, or doesn't keep decreasing like way, yeah. And magically I am left with 4 stitches, which I think is what I need to make the eye cord, which is what I'm gonna do for the straps, because I looked up how to do spaghetti straps yesterday, and that is what it's called, and I'm going to watch that tutorial now and see if I can do it. It looks, I don't know, I think it'll be very messy. I lied. The tutorial that I watched did 3 stitches, so I'm just gonna do that for simplicity's sake. So I'm just gonna do 1 more row decreasing on the arm side. I also took off my cord because this is very little. There's not necessary. Plus, you're supposed to use double pointed needles for this, which I don't have. I'm gonna see if I can use these as if they are. Because like technically it just doesn't have the point, but it's whatever. It's working better than I thought, though honestly it'd be so much easier just to like use a crochet hook or something and chain it. And my knitting is still pretty messy, so it's a bit messy. I'll probably end up stitching my back and front panel together so that I can try it on and see how long the cord thing needs to be. But using these like double pointed needles is working, so that's nice. I definitely recommend watching the tutorial that I did. I'll have it linked below, but I'll go over it briefly. So we have 3 on the hook. We're just knitting it, all knit stitch, all normal. And then instead of flipping your work, you're just gonna slide this to the end and start knitting again like normal, because then this, I guess, wraps around like this, which creates this like tube instead of just a line. So you just continue knitting like so and slide again. So it works with these needles because I don't ever have to use this point to knit with. I can just flip this around and use this. My cord is pretty long at this point, so I'm gonna sew these together to see how much longer I need to make it. I'm not very good at sewing and it's pretty self-explanatory, so you're on your own. I just gotta jab in through everything. So this is my first time trying this on, so I'm a little nervous. Usually I try things on like a bajillion times while making it, so I know things aren't going terribly wrong. This looks really big. That might be okay. Oh, my stitches. It's a good thing I put bobby pins in those. It's gonna be a bit hard to tell because that's all bunched up, but oh, it looks okay. Look at that. How much longer do I need to? Oh, pretty longer. This much longer. Wow. Was not expecting it to actually look like something. Nice. Ha ha ha. I finished it and I sewed it on. Beautiful. Time for this side. How I knew where to sew it, or where I guessed how to sew it, was I just folded this at the seam and then I lined this up parallel, or it was parallel when I sewed it, with the front piece and sewed it there. All right, tis the final viewing. I didn't take the white piece out yet because I'm scared it's gonna wreck it, so I want to see it before I pull that out. Plus, I don't know what I did, but this side's way smaller. I think it's not smaller, it just looks smaller because this middle piece goes over that way when it should have just stayed in the middle like this. I don't know, it looks wonky, but it's fine. Maybe it'll look less wonky once I take this out. It'll be less obvious. Oh, you can see where that was. It's fine. Also, I'm not gonna do the little cute things because I think those are just patches. Definitely cannot knit them. This is where my skill level is at. I could always just stitch this part together like this and no one would even know.